Okay, well, with NFL free agency just around the corner, I thought this could be an interesting idea for a video, is to go back and look at the big name free agents that have been signed in the past 5 years and simply just talk about if they've worked or if they haven't. Can you, quote unquote, build a team through free agency? Or in this video, really, do the big name free agents actually turn you into championship contenders or just simply help your team? Now, I will mention at the top, a couple of years ago, I did a similar kind of video, but I'm going to talk about different things in it, where in that video, what I did was I went through and looked at the teams that spent the most in free agency each year, and in that video, the conclusion I came to was that essentially, spending big in free agency can help you for the next season, but usually doesn't help you that much further down the line. If you're paying in free agency, you're probably going to actually suffer long term, but you might benefit short term. The Jacksonville Jaguars actually built 2 competitive rosters this way by spending a bunch of money in free agency and then having success the next year, but then kind of falling off and the following year. 2017, a good recent example when they did something like that. But that's just spending a lot of money in general. What about individual contracts? So I went with 2 different types of individual contracts, and I essentially looked at every contract that the average dollars per year was 16 million or more, and I simply just looked at if I would say it was a success of a contract, not a success of a contract, and then an underwhelming contract. Maybe players still had some success, but wasn't quite as good as you would hope. There was just a couple of things that I couldn't put in yes or no, so I put in underwhelming. So as for players who made 16 million or more, it's actually 15.5 million or more. It's a weird number, but I rounded up to 16, but then now I'm stuck in this weird number. I should have just chose at 15. I don't know why I did it this way. Anyway, you see the weird cutoff I had here. Nearly half were just in the no category, and another 15% underwhelming. So only 38% of players who were signed on for more than 16 million a year ended up being at least underwhelming and at worst just not a good contract whatsoever. Now, there are some positives. I also went up to 20 million to see this, and there's only 10 players in the past handful of years, past 5 years, that fit this category, which is why you see pretty easy numbers there. But 3 out of the 10 did work out, 4 did not, and 3 were underwhelming. A couple were just like in their first year, like Christian Wilkins is underwhelming because he got injured in his first year. That will probably change to either yes or no, depending on how the rest of his contract works out, right? But that's why there's more underwhelmings for 20 plus million, because those are more recent contracts, because contracts get higher every year. These were the contracts that worked out. For some reason, I didn't capitalize Robert Hunt's last name. I apologize, but I would say he's worked out. I was surprised he got 20 million. You could argue that was a bit of a lot for a guard, but at the same time, he's done what they wanted him to do, so I would say it's worked out. Calvin Ridley, I would say worked out. Again, we can argue if it's a great team-building decision and all that stuff, but he has been the player that they would want him to be, and that's kind of what I'm saying by worked out. Did the player come on and do what you wanted him to do, essentially? And then Danielle Hunter, also a player that definitely has worked out. He's been very good in free agencies. So, been very good. 25 million a year, but, is playing worth it and definitely bringing to Houston what they were hoping he would bring. I also was curious about the quarterback situation because there's Sam Darnold and Russell Wilson who are going to be on new teams. Could be, I think probably both will get over 16 million. I don't really know what Wilson's going to have, to be honest, but I think Darnold certainly will get way more than that. He'll get over 20 million. So there were 3 quarterbacks to make the list. These were the 3. Kirk Cousins made 45 million and got benched before the season was even over. Derek Carr got 38 million. I put him in the underwhelming category because he's just been injured, but hasn't been bad. So I figured underwhelming feels fair for him. So he was one of the guys that made over 20 million. That was underwhelming. And then Jimmy Garoppolo, who you might be confused for a second saying, wait, when did Jimmy Garoppolo make 24 million? That wasn't the 49ers. He wasn't a free agent then. They traded for him. And what are you saying? This was the Raiders. If you remember, they gave him over 24 million a year, which I had forgotten it was that much. I remember they paid him. But yeah, it was 24 million a year. Another guy who got benched before the season is over. So out of the 3 guys, one's been injured a bunch, and the other two got benched before the season is over. And this just, I mean, again, it's a sample size of 3. Paying too much attention to it would be silly. But essentially, usually when there's a quarterback who hits free agency like this, there's a reason for it. And I would say Kirk Cousins was someone who was a success when he went to the Vikings. He did what they wanted him to do there, so he's been a positive example and a negative example. But ultimately, I mean, usually when there's a quarterback hitting free agency that's going to make big money, there's a reason a team is moving off of them, right? So as a whole, this is not my most in-depth video I've ever done, but I was a little surprised to see how high of a percentage of players who were, paid decent money did not even do what they thought what that player would do to the team. Because again, I'm not measuring, did it help your team and make your team better? I'm simply just measuring, did you go from as good as you were in free agency to being as good as you were with the new team? And a big part of why I think there isn't this huge, upside to signing big name free agents is because, kind of similar to what I said about quarterbacks, but it's really true for every position. If you hit free agency, a lot of times there's a reason for it. Not always, but a lot of times there's a reason for why a team isn't re-signing you. Teams have the threat of a franchise tag. So you only get one franchise tag per team, but if there's a player you really like, a lot of times you make sure that you keep them in the building and you use the threat of the franchise tag usually to give them a long-term deal, but if not, you can at least franchise tag them, right? When it doesn't happen, then maybe the team is saying, you know what, okay, fine, we'll let you walk for nothing. Because a lot of times teams will do the thing where they franchise tag someone and then trade him, like a Brian Burns, for example. The Panthers tagged him, then traded him to the Giants. I was also trying to look at any trends. Like, I was thinking, like, in my head, I'm like, well, offensive line probably would translate pretty well team to team. But actually, no. Like, pretty much every position has around the same hit rate, with the exception of quarterbacks, which is a lot lower. But it's only 3, so it's a low sample size. For the most part, it seems to be pretty even across the board that sometimes players, for whatever reason, just aren't as good when they change teams and play in a different system. So I think that would probably be my biggest takeaway, is that I do think if you're going to go out and sign a big name free agent, don't do the whole, okay, this player, will he fit this scheme? I don't know, but he's so good, like, oh, Kenny Golladay would work in any scheme, let's just bring him on board. Well, maybe not. Maybe you still have to pay attention to scheme, even with these big name players. Because I do think, like, J.C. Jackson was a perfect example. He went to a completely different system. Well, he also got injured, but he went to a completely different situation when he went to the Chargers, different scheme, and just was not able to play great. Granted, he wasn't great when he went back to the Patriots either, but still, that's just kind of, something I would pay attention to is, when it comes to scheme, people kind of notice with corners, but it's really true with every position. You got to just make sure that you're, getting someone who still will be in a good situation. Sometimes it still doesn't work, but, it's a risk, right? You never know how it's going to work out. People always say you got to build through the draft, and you do. But also, I should mention, before I end this, while some of these numbers aren't great, Joe Thuney is a perfect example of someone who's on this list. He got a big contract and has been a massive part of several Super Bowl runs for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I wouldn't necessarily say you should never go out and sign a big name free agent. Just there is a gamble there, and you got to make sure you're kind of being smart here, is how I would view it. But yeah, those are my thoughts on all of this. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching. Hey, thanks for watching to the end of that video. I do appreciate it. If you want to see my other channel, Jackson Kruger Movies, where I talk about movies, give some film reviews and stuff like that of a different kind, if that seems like your kind of thing, the link is in the description below for that, as is the link for my Twitter account. I'm at Jackson Kruger, so give me a follow on there if that's your kind of thing. And also, of course, remember to hit the subscribe button on this channel. I do always appreciate it, and thanks again for watching to the end of the video.